corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Another shooting. It's another day, another shooting. In fact, several today. As I was looking through the shooting, one not too far from where I'm at, up in Pittston, Pennsylvania, at a Walmart. Again, another day, more gun violence. This time today, another mass shooting. And I think we're going to have to start talking about what mass shootings are. Last I saw, 4 people were killed. Some reports said 3, some reports say 4. Multiple people shot. The gunman dead, good. And I know I'm not supposed to say that. But good, because at some point, got to get, man, at some point, who goes to a medical building and shoots people? And I know it's not the gun. Yeah, I know. And what's really bizarre to me? What's really bizarre to me is, in almost the same moment that the reports are coming out that this horrible shooting is going on, the Arizona Republican Party decides, hey, this would be a great time to tweet out something really stupid. Like something stupid like the Second Amendment is absolute. And I'm going, really? Are you that dumb? And understand, this is jingoism. This is for the low information voter. This is for the low information Republican, because I'm hoping that the GOP, at least the folks who tweeted this out, they know. They know. For those who don't, the Second Amendment, amendments are absolute. Amendments, by definition, are changes. They're not absolute. Amendments are additions. They're meant to improve things. And amendments can be changed. Did you know? This is, I guess, one of those, did you know that our Constitution, our beloved Constitution, can be changed? It can be altered. Things can be taken. Parts can be repealed. It can happen. Dare I say, things can be amended. And you go, but is it possible? Can we amend our Constitution? Of course we can. Not easy. Not easy. But it's a living document. And I know, as much as my original intentist friends like to believe that no, it's a dead document, it's only what's written. It is a living, breathing document, and it's meant to be changed. As times change, it's meant to be changed. So I'm of the mindset, maybe we need to do something around the Second Amendment to update the language for the slow in the back of the room. This is something. Now, understand, the process of changing or amending our Constitution, not easy. But, you look at these tragedies, and there's got to be some consensus. There's got to be some things where we go, no, we're kind of tired of this. Now, understand, it's very difficult. Very difficult. There are 2 paths that you can go by. Congress, both the House and the Senate, by a 2/3 vote, have to come up with a proposal and pass it through. 2/3, way high bar. Or you have to have a constitutional convention where 2/3 of the states then agree, yeah, we need to do this. Then, once you have this proposal formalized and it's gone through that first step, then it has to go and be ratified by 3/4 of the states. Really high bar. because we don't want to be rushing and hurrying and changing things. That wasn't the point. Now we've done it. We've done it 27 times in our country's history. So it can be done. Can be done. Just not easy. So for those folks in the Arizona Republican Party who evidently need to go back to 8th grade civics class, there's a way to do this. Now, as I said, they know. These are folks who know this. They know this was for the low information, knuckle dragging mouth breathers. This is for the chuckleheads out there who go, it's absolute. It's amendment. It's absolute. No, it's not. And the leaders know this. And because they know how to ram through legislation, they know how to get things rammed through. And I look at Ohio. Ohio just rammed through a piece of legislation that's going to arm teachers and going to get them a whopping 2 hours of training. Count them. 1, 2. 2 whole hours of training. That's right. 2 hours of training. 2 of them. That's right. Going to arm every adult in a school with a deadly weapon and a whopping 2 hours of training. And as I said yesterday, the reality is this is a huge step forward for our country where the vast majority of people have none. And I'll tell you, I love the shooting fail videos where people are going, oh, gee, what does this look like? And they are looking down the hole or they shoot themselves in the leg. Find those to be hysterical. Because, well, we're handing out deadly weapons like candy. And look, the NRA, if we could have vending machines, they'd have them. And, I look at what's going on down in Texas. And the rumor that I'm hearing, the reason that the Uvalde police did what they did and are kind of circling the wagons is there's possibly one of the policemen may have shot a kid. And they're trying to duck and cover. Now, can you imagine? Think about this. Come with me on this journey, if you will. Now, these police officers, highly trained, went through the active shooter trainings, got tons of federal money for body armor and training. These are people who spend their lives. This is their career. This is what they wake up every single day to do. This is their profession. This is their calling. If it's true that this happened, can you imagine a school full of teachers with, a janitor with a whopping 2 hours of training and the bullets flying from every direction and a whole bunch of good guys and gals with guns and everybody throwing shots everywhere? Because here's the thing, and this is the part that's very scary. The gun crowd wants you to believe that we're safer with more guns. And we're not. We're less safe. The more guns that are out there, the more guns that are in people's hands, the more likely it is that someone's going to be shot by quote-unquote friendly fire. And is it going to matter to the parents if it was the murderer who killed their child or a police officer? If it was a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun? No, not really. And can you imagine the teacher? Their calling is to educate children. Their calling is to nurture and to. Can you imagine? Now, interestingly enough, and what I find most frustrating in these moments is our friends in the Republican Party seem to love these shootings. It's when they get to shine. It's when they get to come out and they get to take center stage. Ohio, right now, front and center. Because of this, we're going to arm all teachers bill. During the debate on the floor, the state senator, Niraj Anadi, he said the Democrats are crying crocodile tears over these school shootings. Crocodile tears. Yeah, because they don't really care about the kids. They just want the issue. And you go, really? State Representative Reggie Stoltzfus School shootings have been around for decades, he said. They're not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. So throw up the hands. Basically, just, you know what? Hey, just lay back. Relax. It's going to happen anyway. We can't change it. Hopeless. Can't do anything about it. This is the frustrating part. A lot of emails from folks going, I heard you talking about guns, and you're just going to make it easier for the criminal folk. That's not the point. It's not what we want. We want to make it harder for all people to get guns. We want people to be responsible with their guns. I'm not a gun grabber. I'm not. I've got one. I want people to be held accountable. I want them to be responsible, and I'd like them to be trained. But you're going to make it more expensive for poor people. I don't want everybody having guns. If you want to have one, if you feel the need, if you're somehow, look, this is where these interesting moments come up. I've lived in some of the most dangerous places that you can be, and never felt the need to have a gun. It's only when I moved to rural America, where everybody else had them, that I go, trouble. The good law-abiding folk who seem to always want to be talking about shooting someone or something. That's the concern to me. Now I look at the moment we're in, and I look at this thing in Ohio, and I feel for these teachers. And I got to wonder, and this is where in my mind I'm going, if you're a young person right now, are you looking at education? And I got to wonder, in these education programs across the country, what's the enrollment numbers? What are the enrollment numbers like? How many young people are now going into education? Now, a couple of years ago, my daughter was like, I want to be a teacher. And I'm like, no, I don't think so, for different reasons. Because back then it was like, no, I see all the attacks coming from crazy people. I see all of the attacks coming from the right wing and the religious fanatics and all of the hatred being spewed at educators. And it's even worse now than it was back then. And now this, it used to be parents were afraid to allow their kids to go into the military. Now you don't want them to go into a classroom. Because you've got one party that's going, hey, we're looking for something. We're looking for ways to lessen these numbers. We're looking for ways to mitigate some of the risk. We're looking for ways to make them less severe. No one's saying we're going to eliminate anything completely. The other side is saying, well, since you can't eliminate it completely, since you can't do away with it, we're going to do nothing. Hey, just lay back and relax. Always, it's going to be with us. We're just going to have to live with this. This is what makes us exceptional. We're the country that lets little kids go to school and die. It's what makes our republic great. Roll the dice, take a chance, send your kids to school. Now, the Texas governor, who's livid, by the way, at the police and what he was told about what happened down in Uvalde, gun control is not being discussed at all. Which you go, why not? Everybody I know believes in gun control. When you get down to the bare bones of it, everybody believes in some form of gun control. I don't think I've yet to find anyone who wants me to have a nuclear weapon. I don't think I've found anyone yet who thinks that I should have a stealth bomber. We can start walking that back, howitzer, shoulder fired rocket. We can start going back. I believe that everyone thinks that we should have some control. It's a matter of where you draw the line. And I think we can have that conversation, and we should have that conversation. Now, there are a couple of Republicans, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who says he's open to having a conversation about raising the age at which people can buy these AR-15s. Adam Kinzinger, the Republican from Illinois, he says that he's also willing to discuss raising the age and open to the idea of a federal ban on AR-15 style rifles. It's a conversation worth having. We know that we banned assault weapons. The number of deadly shootings did go down. They didn't go away. No one's saying they're gonna, but they went down. As I said yesterday, do I think anything's going to happen? No. I think we're going to continue to allow these shootings to happen, and it's not going to matter how many of our children die. It's not going to matter how many of us die. And ultimately, look, these shootings, while horrific, they're frequent, but they aren't those huge numbers. Because we aren't talking about the other gun deaths, the thousands of people who die, just one or two at a time. Because we don't care about them. Or at least that's what it seems like. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Hey, other news. Speaking of guns, John Hinckley Jr. now granted a free and clear. He is now out of what was the mental facility. He is no longer a danger to himself or to others. I guess Jodie Foster is okay to go along and do her thing. Yeah, I guess that's what money will do for you. Very, very interesting times. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any of our program, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss an episode. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, some good news if you were dumb enough to go to one of the Corinthian colleges. And I say that because, at the time, I remember going, these are all scams. All these for-profit universities, scams. And the high-pressure sales pitches, it's like the old correspondence courses of the past, only a lot more expensive. The president and the Biden administration has announced today that they are moving to wipe out automatically all of the debt that students, federal student loan debt, that the hundreds of thousands of students who attended these for-profit Corinthian college chains, that they've accrued over the years. Now remember, these are the folks who, I think it was back in 2015. They were founded in 95. They collapsed in 2015. But in that decade, oh boy, did they, or in that 20-year span, boy, did they screw people over. In fact, they're going to forgive about $5.8 billion in debt to more than 560,000 borrowers. And I keep coming back to this. How many of these people did they lock up? Where's the perp walks? Where are the trials? Where are all of those people who were behind this scheme? Lock these people up. Because here's the thing, and look, I feel for these folks who were just trying to make their lives better. Because, the reality is most of these folks were poor and working class folks who are sold on the idea that, hey, you know, I can do this in my spare time while I'm still working, and they were sold the American dream. Hey, I can work hard, you know, I get this degree, and you know, I know somebody who does recruiting, and if you had one of these degrees, even if you finished, and sadly most people didn't, but even if you had one of these degrees from these diploma mills, they didn't recognize them. So you didn't even get the hey, nice job, you at least finished this. You didn't even get that. So it was a screw job from top to bottom. But you know, this is going to cause some anger among, you know, and this is the problem I have with forgiving parts of student loan debt instead of having a comprehensive plan on how we're going to fix the system that Education Incorporated has screwed a generation or two over with. Right now, you've got a number of Republicans. Richard Burr, who is the ranking member of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, they recently announced the introduction, and we've talked about this already, of the Student Loan Accountability Act. Yeah, him, Burr, and Tillis, along with Mittens, and Tim Scott from South Carolina and Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, they're all behind this. And I love the name. I told you this before. Love the name, the Student Loan Accountability Act. It's like we're going to hold someone accountable. Who are we going to hold accountable? Oh yeah, the people who are least able to deal with it. We're not going to hold the people who screwed these people over. No, we're not going to hold the predatory loan companies. We're not going to hold the Corinthian college people. We're not going to throw them in jail. No, it's the person at the bottom of the hill. It's the poor working stiff who just wanted to get an education. That's who we're going to screw over. And what this Student Loan Accountability Act would do, it would make sure that Joe Biden can do nothing to help people who are in this moment. Now, if you remember, Biden ran on canceling $10,000 worth of debt, and there's some talk that he's going to try and do that. This piece of legislation would ensure that no, you can do nothing, Joe, because they're saying, look, you know, you caused inflation, you and your spending on those people, giving them that $1,400 a month. How dare you? Making sure that people had food and were able to stay in their homes a little bit longer before we start kicking them to the curb. Oh, by the way, that's going to start coming because most of the moratoriums across the country, those are being lifted, which means if you fell behind on your rent, there are going to be a lot of homeless folks. And as rent prices keep skyrocketing, because, hey, you know, inflation, and it's this inflation expectation that is driving a lot of this. Again, greed. It's, hey, you know, prices are going to go up. We expect prices to go up, so we're going to make them go up. And I love the fact that there are people out there who go, no, it's Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. Joe Biden's the reason for inflation. In fact, there was a poll that just came out that said 60% of the people blame Joe Biden. It's his policies and his spending, that reckless $1,400 that you got. That's what's driving the inflation. A 32% point to Russia and what's going on in Ukraine. And just 8.5%, or I guess 9% of the people go, I don't know. Those are probably the right people because they don't know. You know what choice wasn't there? CEO greed, Wall Street. Choice wasn't there. Gee, I wonder why that choice wasn't given. Maybe you got a thought. Let me know. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. I gotta wonder why. Why wasn't that a choice? Because they wanted it to be Biden. That's why. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2000. That was the day meat packers at the Dakota Premium Foods in St. Paul, Minnesota, staged a 7-hour sit-down strike for health and safety. They protested assembly line speed up, being forced to work while injured, and the dreaded gang time supervisors used to avoid paying overtime.
Remarkably, the organizing drive came after the workers took action on their own behalf. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union had organized the plant briefly in the early 1990s. They quickly lost ground when the company pressed a successful decertification campaign after refusing a first contract. This time, workers found that as the assembly line pace increased, so did the rate of injuries. Workers came into the plant that morning resolved to make a stand. Management bullied them for hours throughout the day to give up. Finally, management was forced to concede to many of the workers' concerns, including observation of line speed changes and uniform hours of work. Workers eagerly signed UFCW cards while the company unleashed its propaganda campaign to scare workers away from the union. Management claimed workers would have to pay outrageous sums in union dues, that they'd lose their medical benefits, and that their names would be turned over to the federal government. The undocumented among the workers, some of whom were the best union fighters in the plant, were unshaken by these threats. Then the company began targeting the strike leaders with firings and endless job transfers. Workers solidly stood their ground, and the UFCW overwhelmingly won the NLRB election a month later. The union successfully weathered years of continued harassment, threats, and decertification campaigns, but could not survive the closing of the plant in 2014.
Last July, several GOP senators combined their 5-watt intellects to charge that inflation was rising because of, quote, insane tax and spending spree of President Biden and the Democrats. Never mind that the insane spending is for such sensible, productive, and enormously popular national needs as child care and jobless benefits. Mitch McConnell's rabidly partisan flock saw the chance to politicize the public's legitimate worries about rising prices. You poor consumers are made to pay more for basics, they squawked, because of Socialist Joe's investment in grassroots people. Follow the ricocheting pinball of the GOP's logic. 1, they say that helping hard-hit families induces them to refuse to go to work. 2, this creates blockages in the global supply chain. 3, this causes shortages of everything. 4, this forces corporate bosses to raise all prices, which 5, slams the middle class and poor, so 6, lazy workers cause inflation. Whoa, Rube Goldberg couldn't have dreamed up a more fantastical diagram to deflect attention from what's really happening, namely that instead of an inflation problem, we have a corporate greed problem. Of course, the greedmeisters insist that their pursuit of excess corporate profits has not driven any price surges. In our economy of free market competition, they snap, prices are established by the law of supply and demand. It's the magic of the marketplace, they explain. But magicians don't do magic, they perform illusions. And the illusion of free market competition implodes when it hits the reality that our economy doesn't remotely resemble a competitive marketplace. This is Jim Hightower saying, for some 40 years, corporate-directed government policies have been transforming America into a monopoly nation, letting the few gouge the many. That's where inflation comes from.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Got an email during the break. Again, this kind of, there's nothing we can do. We can't stop them all, so we can't do anything about it. And this is where the Republicans, this is where they want us to believe it's hopeless. That if you can't do it all, if you can't stop every bad thing from happening, that there's nothing that can be done. And they're going to throw up our hands and just go, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. We just have to live with this. And understand, this is an American problem. This is our problem. The rest of the world is looking at us going, you're going to let your children be slaughtered and you're going to do nothing? Really? And sadly, the answer is, half the country. Absolutely. That is sadly where they are. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on where this is and maybe where we end up going with this. I've asked our good friend Chris Hahn to come talk with us. Chris is one of my favorite podcasters he's the host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast, also a syndicated radio host. Chris, thanks for taking some time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Rick. How you doing?
So, what do you make of this? And this is one of those things that just infuriates me. This idea that, well, you can't stop every bad thing from happening, so we can't do anything.
It's funny. After 9/11, we put in all sorts of measures, spent trillions of dollars to stop things that would not have possibly stopped the 9/11 attacks. I mean, they helped. They might have stopped other attacks, but they wouldn't have stopped every attack. But we spent trillions of dollars on that, and it has made a difference. Any measure we take will stop something, will help some, right? If it's any sensible gun safety measures we come into, whether it's assault weapons bans, whether it's closing gun show loopholes, whether it's raising the age. My favorite thing is a waiting period. I think 90 days would probably be a good waiting period where you could do a thorough background check. I, of course, have always advocated for licensing, registration, and insurance on every gun purchase, and let the market decide how much it's going to cost somebody to get a gun. It's a free market solution. The government can't deny you a permit if you have insurance. But we go nowhere with this all the time because a small radical minority of Americans don't want to do anything to make it safer in America against guns.
But it's a slippery slope. Chris. The second you have a registration, as soon as your registration, this is when they're going to come for them. They're going to come for the guns, just like your car. When you register your car, they're going to come for your car.
Yeah, nobody's ever came for my car. I have a car I've been trying to get rid of, and nobody wants it. So
it is an interesting kind of argument that they make, and it's one of those frustrating things that when you look at the reality of the argument and
anything that happens to decrease the sales or the ability to sell it, whether you're selling it to a terrorist or somebody who wants to go skeet shooting, they don't care. They want the sale.
Yeah, you completely cut out there. You were gone for like 6 hours.
I don't know what
was that again?
I was saying some profound stuff.
I'm sure that was really important. That's why I backed you up, and I'm going to give you a chance to restate that because I know it was something really important.
Man, I'm such an improv comic. But here it is. It's the NRA is not a gun rights organization. They are a gun sales organization, and they don't care if it's a terrorist that's buying the gun or somebody who's going to go shoot skeet with their kids. They are into gun sales. They don't care what you do with that gun as long as you buy it. And enough is enough in this country. It is time for them to be looked at the way they are. And they are scamming their membership. They are owning too many members of this Congress. And it is time for them to be held accountable.
Now, I started today, saying, look, you're right around the same time this shooting happened today in Tulsa. You had the Arizona Republican Party who tweeted out something really stupid.
Right.
The Second Amendment is absolute. And I'm going, I know they're smarter than this. I know they know better. I know this is just for the knuckle draggers in the back of the room, for the chuckleheads in the back of the room who are going to regurgitate this in the lunchroom tomorrow. No, the Second Amendment's absolute.
Even Anthony Scalia didn't believe that the Second Amendment was absolute. The Heller decision is very clear that guns can be regulated like all other rights can be regulated. So, I don't know anybody further to the right than Antonin Scalia, although this court scares me and they may be further to the right. But if he found the ability for guns to be regulated, so should anyone.
So do you see, this is the last I want to get into this, do you see any chance something gets done in this moment? I know Joe Manchin said again that this time's different. I kind of, this is the 119th school shooting that we've had in the last couple of years. I mean, this seems like every time this time is different. And we go through this kind of cycle of outrage and thoughts and prayers, and this time's going to be different. And it's the same thing. And then it kind of dies down. Nothing happens and happens again. And just, is this time different?
No, it's sad. It's not. And I wish I had some better thing to say here. I have been thinking about this. I've been talking to people in the movement. I have been a fighter for gun safety rules forever in my life. And sadly, it's not going to change right now unless, by some miracle, Joe Manchin wakes up tomorrow morning and says, enough with the filibuster. We're going to pass sensible gun safety measures. I don't think he will.
No, that's not going to happen.
And unless the Democrats hold the House and pick up 2 more seats in the Senate, which I don't think is likely, frankly. I think they might be able to pick up a seat in the Senate, but I don't think they're going to hold the House. I don't see this changing anything, and that is a stain on our republic. It is a stain on our lawmakers who failed to act in the wake of this. It is something our children will see as our failure when, years from now, this government comes to its senses and they do change things.
Yeah, now there's some people are saying, no, this is going to be the angry suburban mom election because, guns and abortion now are going to be on the front of the ticket. Are you buying any of this?
Nope. This is going to be the $6 a gallon gas election.
See, and this is where I'm at, Chris, and I'm with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Chris Hahn, syndicated radio host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Make sure you check that out. We'll get links out on social media. This is where I'm at. It's still the economy, stupid. It's still people are paying too much for gas. We're finding out now the administration wasn't told about the baby formula until April. It seems like there's a disconnect. There's major problems here.
Oh, I agree. And a lot of those problems are out of the president's control, but people vote with their wallets. And the elections are almost always determined by the mood of the country and the direction of the country. And even people who are doing well are shocked by the prices they're seeing right now, both at the pump, at stores. We have full employment in this country. Wages have never been higher in this country. Wage growth has never been faster, but it's not keeping up with inflation. Inflation is not transitory. It's very clearly here for a while. And it is scaring a lot of Americans. And I fear very really that we are going into a recession. And that is not good for the party of the president and the party in power. And as much as I will do to fight to get Democrats elected this year and fight to get good people elected who care about the future of this country, I fear that we are going to elect some very bad people to the Senate and to the Congress, to the House.
And some very scary people across the country. And I fear here where I'm at in Pennsylvania that we could have basically a Nazi as governor come next year. And that frightens me.
It frightens me too. I mean, that guy should not be anywhere near the governor's mansion. And if you look at the polling in Pennsylvania right now, it doesn't appear that he will be. But again, I don't know what the cost of gas is going to be in November. If it's $3.50 a gallon, that guy ain't winning. If it's $5.50 a gallon, look out.
Now, the president's coming out and saying that he finally admitted there's not much he can do about prices. And because I think the Republicans have done a very good job, and you got to give them credit. They're hanging this around his neck. Yesterday, Jim Jordan tweeted out that it's all Biden's fault that the oil prices are so high because he's not producing enough. And I'm not sure when we nationalize the oil companies or if that's what Jim Jordan's advocating for. But
I never knew Jim Jordan was a socialist.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But, it's one of these things where they're taking the ignorance of the American people and they're playing on it, because I know people who actually believe there's a switch in the White House where Joe Biden can jack the prices up with the flip of a switch.
Yeah, no, if Joe Biden allowed every inch of U.S. territory to be drilled for oil today, it wouldn't affect oil prices for 5 years. And frankly, oil is trading at right around $110 a barrel. But gas is selling as if oil is trading at $300 a barrel. So what's that all about, right? That's about rampant speculation. That is about profiteering. That is not about even market forces.
Yep.
And, maybe there needs to be some sort of investigation into that. And I bet you if there was an investigation into that, it would find all those things.
Yeah.
But again, is that going to happen between now and November? Unlikely.
No, I've been saying for the last year, where's our Harry Truman? Where's our Teddy Roosevelt? I want someone, going after the war profiteers, and I want someone breaking up these huge conglomerates. Are the baby formula problem? We got 4 companies control 90% of the entire industry. We should be breaking that up. There should be much more production than that.
And Trump's, trade agreement with Canada and Mexico made it harder for us to import baby formula from Canada and Mexico. I mean, it's who are we blaming here? You're going to blame Joe Biden for a market failure when you call yourself a capitalist, when you say that, government being involved in the marketplace is a bad thing. And government is not involved in the baby formula marketplace other than to regulate the contents of that baby formula. The market itself is very free. And unfortunately, the market failed. The market failed to protect babies, which is why there were some recalls and why we were in this problem to begin with. Plants need to be retooled. And the market failed to adjust to the demand that was made when those two plants had to shut down. It's amazing to me.
So what you're telling me is, Biden's not in the basement of the White House making baby formula? That's not how this works?
No, Biden's not making baby formula. Not going to happen. It's a shame. It's horrible. But I think Biden's doing everything he can to get baby formula back on the shelves. And there's not a lot he can do.
Yeah. Now, again, when I go back to the Jim Jordans and the Republicans have done a really masterful job in this and hanging this around his neck, because they've got, the last poll that I've seen, 60% of the people polled said, this is Biden's fault. The inflation is Biden's fault because, that $1,400 he gave out last year, that was a bridge too far, Chris.
The president, unfortunately, even though it is not his fault, it is his problem. And we know this.
Yep.
It would be the problem of any president right now. If there was a Republican in the White House, it would be their problem. Not their fault, their problem. And that's the problem with being president. That's the problem with midterm elections, especially when your party controls everything. There's nobody to blame. Nobody understands the free market economy. They all, rail against socialism, but they think socialism is something to do with Russia in the 1980s and bread lines. They don't understand that what they're calling for at this moment is actually socialism. And it's sad. And the president is going to be blamed, and the Democrats need to make this a choice election. The candidates that are able to successfully make this a choice election, which is why maybe Pennsylvania goes the Democratic way, both in the House and in the Senate, both in the Senate and the gubernatorial races, because they're nominated some pretty weird, guys on the right. Look, I mean, that, what's his name? Mastronomio, whatever his name is. He is a Nazi. The man has said he will not trust the will of the voters. That's pretty bad.
Yeah. Well,
No, this is where I want to finish up because, bringing up Benito Mastriano is an interesting way to go because he has said that, we may not count the votes. That might not happen. We may choose to not, listen to the will of the people. And this seems to be some of the talking points we're seeing, not just here in Pennsylvania, but across the country, as the Republicans are building their army to challenge voters at the polls, to challenge results, to put people in the Secretary of State positions, to maybe we don't even count ballots at all, or we just anoint people.
It is a scary thought that there is a major party in this country that is actively trying to undermine the democratic process. And if they are successful, we will not recognize this country, not in 10 years, in 2 years. And that is a scary thought. So everybody out there that sees people like this out there running needs to be aware, and they need to make this a choice election, and they might not have a chance to have a choice.
That is the place where we'll wrap this up, because at the end of it, for me, you got to make sure you're registered to vote. You got to make sure you vote. You got to be militant about it, because I expect lots of the right army to be out there challenging people's rights to vote, challenging ballots, and doing everything they can do to actually steal the next elections.
There will be shenanigans, I guarantee it, and we need to be ready for it.
There you go. Chris, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Anytime.
Good stuff. Chris Hahn, nationally syndicated radio host, also host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. You can check his stuff out at ChristopherHahn.com. We'll get links out on social media where you can check that stuff out. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Rick Smith here, host of The Rick Smith Show. You know, Father's Day is just around the corner. And if your dad is as hard to find a gift for as my wife and kids claim that I am, here's a little gift-giving wisdom from our friends at Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. It's true. We do. Every holiday in my house, it's the same thing. Dad, what do you want for this holiday? And, I always give the same thing. Give me a hug and spend a little time with me. I don't need ties or cologne or any of that stuff. And now, thanks to Omaha Steaks, they ask, Dad, what do you want? Steaks. Give me the Dads Want Steaks package. Just go to omahasteaks.com, type Rick Smith in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package. And for just $99, this limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees that I love, and I guarantee he'll love too. The smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignons, the gourmet jumbo franks, their air-chilled, boneless chicken breast, and of course my favorite, the thick, delicious, boneless pork chops. And to finish it off, the sweet finish of it all, the delicious caramel apple tartlets. And as a special gift for my listeners, when you type Rick Smith in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you'll also get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These are awesome. You throw them on the grill, cook them to perfection. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor, made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever, a whopping 6 ounces. So this Father's Day, don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. In fact, don't just order one. Get 2 Dads Want Steaks packages. One for him and one he can share with you. Just go to omahasteaks.com and type Rick Smith in the search bar and get the Dads Want Steaks package. You won't regret it. I guarantee it.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So Elon Musk, not all that thrilled about the remote work. In fact, he was tweeting out to the Tesla employees that they should pretend to work somewhere else if they're not willing to come back to the office. He's been trashing remote work for a while, as a number of employers have been finding that people working from home have actually been a little more productive. Because, hey, who wants happy employees? Evidently not Elon. And look, it's been interesting watching Musk and his push to make billionaires, the good guy. Billionaires evidently, according to him, make people happy. Yeah, by mocking their workforce. Very strange. Bloomberg had an interesting story out today that grabbed my attention. And the headline caught me. 1/3 of Americans, it said, making $250,000 live paycheck to paycheck, according to the survey. And I'm going, how's that possible? You're making $250,000 a year. How are you living paycheck to paycheck? Now, understand, these are not people who are not paying their bills. They're doing just fine. But interestingly enough, by generation, millennials are the ones who are struggling the most. And you go, gee, why is that? Oh, a good portion of it could be massive student loan debt. That's a huge part of it. But only 1 in 10 of them said that they were having a hard time meeting their household expenses. But my mindset is like, if you're making at least $250,000 a year, how are you not living okay? How are you not saving money? What decisions are you making? Now, understand, the first question that popped into my head is, where are you living that this is happening? Are you living in California, where to buy a house could cost you well over $1 million? Are you living or are you living in the Midwest, where you could buy a reasonable size house for $300,000? A lot of questions to this survey. But when you start looking at this, you go, what about the poor working staff? I'm not worried about the guy making $250,000 a year so much. I'm worried about that working staff,
people in my world making, 12, 15 bucks an hour, people making 20 bucks an hour. I'm worried about those folks. Can you imagine if you're making 250 grand a year and they're living paycheck to paycheck? Can you imagine, what that single mother working at the McDonald's is going through? And this is where I'm struggling with the right and their attack on Biden and the inflation situation. Because this isn't because, hey, you gave a little bit of money to people to make it through the pandemic. This is an assault on helping lives get better. And this is about ensuring that the wealthy continue to get wealthy and continue policies. I believe, and I've tweeted this out a number of times, I believe all of this is being done on purpose, not as some grand scheme and some conspiracy. Don't get crazy. This is being done on purpose because, hey, we all have expectations that it's the snowball. So, hey, inflation's going to go up 3% next year, 5% next year, so we're going to raise our prices. And people start going, hey, they expect prices to go up, so they start jacking stuff up. And when they say, hey, they keep paying for it, they're going to keep paying for gas at $4.70 a gallon. They're going to pay for gas at $5 a gallon. They're going to keep paying for gas they're going to keep jacking up the price. That's what they're going to do. And until we push back, same thing with food. You got to eat. You got to get gas to get to work. Those things are going up. Interestingly enough, some of the other stuff, not so much. I look at Jamie Dimon, who's telling all of his shareholders, get ready for the hurricane. The economy's going to turn bad because it's going to be an economic hurricane. We don't know if it's going to be a minor one or a superstorm Sandy, but brace yourself. They want this. They need this. And it comes back to Musk, forcing people back to work, forcing them back into the office, making desperate, pliable workers again. The great resignation, a generation of Zoomers who are going, we want some value for our time. We want fulfilling jobs. We want things that are going to make our lives better. We want better lives than our parents. And there's got to be a moment that we're going to make it desperate again. So here comes recession. They're going to make things difficult. And as Musk said, it's going to be about 18 months. It's going to be a wake-up call. Because you need to put those people back in line. I didn't see a story or a survey on people making $15 an hour. How are they doing? Well, nobody cares about that. Because we know they're struggling. But you know what that would be? Oh, they're just whining. They should work harder so they could make it up to the $250,000 range. And then they can complain about, not about living paycheck to paycheck. Because then you can go, well, they're just misusing their money. Because I got to imagine, when you're, depending on where you live, it's got to be part of it. But this coming recession, I fear a big part of this is by choice. We got a Fed who's slamming on the brakes by raising interest rates. We haven't done enough on the supply chain side of things to reshore manufacturing, which we desperately need to do. We haven't done enough policy-wise to ensure that we start breaking up some of these huge conglomerates. We haven't done enough to help families. And, come November, if the elections go the way Chris and I think they're going to go, we're not going to. And that's the sad thing. That's the sad thing. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Hurricane season, we got to remember, is 6 months. It's half of the year. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Buckle up and batten down. NOAA forecasts another active, long hurricane season. Exxon loses its bid to escape climate liability. Major global companies join forces to buy green at Davos. Plus,
if the Pebble project moves forward, it's going to enable other projects to move forward as well.
Good news. Biden EPA to block controversial Pebble mine in Alaska.
I thought that was blocked long ago. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
This is a crisis we have. We're running out of water. Water parks are asking kids to pee in the pool.
It's true. It's that bad. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's not even summer yet, but hurricane season it's already here.
Yep, it starts June 1, and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has forecast another busy Atlantic hurricane season for the 7th straight year in a row. The average number of storms is 14, but NOAA predicts this year will bring 14 to 21 named storms, plus 3 to 6 major hurricanes that reach Category 3 or higher. Now, it's important to remember that the U.S. may see no actual landfalls or a few or many, but the past 2 hurricane seasons both exhausted the list of 21 storm names. That was unprecedented, and the 2020 season was the most active on record.
Well, you know, I could predict that we will see no storms, some storms, or a whole lot of storms.
True, but climate studies do show that warming of the oceans and atmosphere is intensifying hurricanes, rainfall, and flooding, and storm impacts now reach further inland. So it's a good idea to go ahead and be prepared anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme flooding is already hammering Bangladesh and India, where torrential pre-monsoon rains triggered devastating floods that have killed more than 60, displaced millions, and swept away entire towns and villages, infrastructure, and communications, leaving large areas without access to food or clean drinking water. California this week issued new emergency water conservation regulations amid an historic mega drought after calls to voluntarily cut water use had little effect. Starting in mid-June, commercial, industrial, and institutional properties will be banned from watering their lawns. That is, non-functional ornamental turf, not including areas actually used for recreation or community purposes.
Well, to be fair, the last time we had this major drought warnings, a lot of us did cut back on our water. There might not be a lot more to cut back at this point.
But some good news at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week. A group of more than 50 major global corporations, including Microsoft, Google, Volvo, and Ford Motor Company, joined forces for a new Buy Green initiative. The idea is to purchase only green steel, aluminum, cement, and chemicals by 2030. The advanced purchase pledge is a pretty big deal. Experts say it will stoke global demand and help emerging low-carbon technologies scale up.
Well, it's stoking some good publicity for those corporations in any event.
True. In Scandinavia this week, the Finnish parliament passed ambitious new climate legislation. The new policy moves up Finland's target to be carbon neutral to 2035 and to be carbon negative by 2040, and the policy is legally binding.
Wow, that's impressive. I wish we had a real government who could do stuff like that.
Massachusetts State Supreme Court this week rejected a last-ditch effort by ExxonMobil to dismiss a climate liability lawsuit brought by State Attorney General Maura Healey.
Are they still fighting that thing?
They are. The suit accuses the oil giant of lying to investors and the public about the fact that they knew since the 1970s that burning their product would cause dangerous man-made climate change. The ruling means that Exxon will now have to stand trial for fraud in Massachusetts.
Sad.
And finally, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency has proposed new permanent protections for Bristol Bay in Alaska, one of the world's most prolific salmon fisheries. The EPA has proposed to ban the disposal of toxic mining waste in the Bristol Bay watershed, a decision that likely means the end, for real this time, of the wildly controversial, massive proposed gold and copper mine known as Pebble Mine, and effectively ends a fight that has raged for more than a decade.
I thought it was ended months ago, no?
Every decision up to now has chipped away at the Pebble Mine. This, if it is approved, will be the final death knell.
And it'll be permanent until Donald Trump takes office again, right?
One hopes not.
For much more on all of these terrifying stories and more that we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we come out of the pandemic, look, you think about all of the people that we called frontline heroes, and we called them essential, and we gave them really nice titles. We patted them on the back, didn't give them much of raises, and when we did, they clawed them back already, or we gave them a little bonus, but not really increase their standard of living anything. But hey, we did say nice things, gave them those titles, and there were some hashtags, but didn't make lives better, and they're now burning out. And the sad reality is, as we're coming out of this pandemic, and I'm hoping we're coming out of it, sadly, some of the things that I'm seeing not making me happy. But like education, our friends in the healthcare industry, they're burning out and they're looking elsewhere, especially folks who are working in the home healthcare industry and in nursing homes. And as we get older, people are going to need places to retire. People are going to need people to help take care of them. We're heading towards, if not already in, a major crisis situation. And that's why I've asked Arnulfo de la Cruz to come talk with us. Arnulfo is the Executive Vice President of SEIU Local 2015. They represent the home health workers and nursing home workers out in California. Arnulfo, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, really appreciate being on, Rick. Great. Glad to be here joining you all.
So, I'm looking at this, coming out of the pandemic, we've heard horror stories of people who work in nursing homes and work in hospitals and our healthcare heroes. And I don't think we've done near enough for them. In fact, a lot of the stories I hear, people are burnt out, especially as we're not paying attention anymore. Most people I know think it's over. I think we're heading towards a real crisis. I'm curious what your thought is.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree with that, Rick. And, I feel like the way that is most easily put is that you have every day millions of caregivers across the country and here in California as well, who wake up and either punch in and get ready to go to their morning, afternoon, or evening shift in a nursing home in California, or they're a home care provider who's caring for sometimes multiple patients that allows these consumers to live with dignity in their own homes and receive care. And at the end of their workday, they go back home to their families. So they spend all day caring for others, but the question we have for those who can make decisions over their standard of living is, who's caring for the caregivers, right? And we know that long-term care workers, as you mentioned, they're the ones who are helping our grandparents. They're the ones who are helping our children with disabilities. They are essential, as you say. They played a tremendous role, not just during the pandemic, but also before. So a lot of these issues that we have been working on to center caregivers in this country and those whom they care for, because there's a direct relation between caregivers and those whom care for. And who would you want taking care of a loved one of yours or a family member? Someone who's making minimum wage, who doesn't have, family health care themselves and doesn't have benefits? Or would you want someone to take care of your grandmother or grandfather or loved one that's making a living wage, that has good benefits for their own children and their own family? So these are really, really important questions, I think, for the way that we care for people in the United States. And as you mentioned, Rick, like roughly 10,000 Americans are turning 65 every single day in this country. And then the number of older adults, we're not the young country that we used to be. The number of older adults is going to more than double in the next couple of decades. So you have this explosive growth of people who are going to be needing care, people who want to stay in their homes and maybe receive care. And there's not enough of an investment in caregivers to ensure that we're going to be able to be sustainable. So it's a really fundamental, important question that I think that we need to address as a society here in California, and then also across the country.
Yeah, no, the reality is, you judge a society by how they take care of their most vulnerable. They're young and they're old and they're most vulnerable. And I say we're doing a really poor job, given the fact that, we're leading the globe in school shootings and death in school. And also you look at what we're doing to our senior population with these scenarios of understaffing and poor pay for folks who take care of them. And look, I've always believed, you get what you pay for. If you're going to pay someone minimum wage, you're going to get a minimum effort. I want someone who's going to be highly trained, highly qualified, who's going to take care of our loved ones, or ultimately, and I'm not getting any younger either, ultimately me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I always say there's only two types of people when it comes to caregiving. Those who already have a care story, they themselves, or they have a loved one who's being cared for, or those who are going to need it, right? Maybe some of us are younger than others, and eventually we all are going to need some form of care and have loved ones that do. And I think that's an important distinction. And the last 2 years has been incredibly difficult. You had, let's say, a certified nursing assistant. Maybe some of the folks listening are familiar with that type of job, but there's thousands and thousands of certified nursing assistants who work in nursing homes across California. During the pandemic, there was a situation where you could be a CNA and be caring for up to 16 patients on one shift while making not a whole lot more than minimum wage. And at the end of your shift, once you clock out and you've given your all to try to care for, more than 10 patients, run their IVs, food, help to clean, make sure that they're taken care of, you still have to get home to cook dinner, to prepare for your own family, to get your kids ready for school the next day. So, when we polled the members of SEIU 2015, our union, specifically those who work in nursing homes, about half of them said they're likely to leave their current position within the next year. Wow. And when we asked the question why, really wages and staffing are really the primary reasons that they had mentioned for their potential departure, which we know is going to further exacerbate the crisis of care in California and across the country.
Yeah, a lot of the healthcare workers that I've talked to, staffing levels are a huge part of it. The workers the nurses who were on strike up in Massachusetts, staffing levels were the issue that they were focused on. Same thing in Buffalo, same thing, all in places all across this country. Because how do you take care of 16 people in any given shift? How do you give them any kind of care? How do you deal with any of their needs? That's 30 minutes per person per shift. How do you help them at all?
It's nearly impossible. The other thing too, Rick, that's really interesting is like in this profession, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of professions in healthcare, but it's not like a home care worker or a CNA sees a posting on a website that says jobs. When you talk to these folks, they tend to be people who felt a calling to this type of profession. They actually really love what they do. They love to care for people, but you can only have so much care. You can only provide so much physically and emotionally. But when you're being asked to care for that many people in one given shift, it becomes unsustainable, right? And I think you started us off by saying that the burnout is exploding because you put the 2 years of the pandemic as an overlay where staffing was already an issue. Nurses, CNAs, healthcare workers for years have been fighting around issues of staffing and making sure that these primarily for-profit, because the majority of nursing homes in California they're not providing a public service, they're for-profit, they're owned by companies who are trying to make a profit. So really ensuring that it's not a situation of profit over people, which can be really nasty in a situation of care because these are actual people's lives that are on the line. Yeah. We really have a lot of work to do. We've made some progress, but I know that we have a tremendous amount of work to do to make sure that caregivers and the patients and consumers they care for are able to live with dignity and feel respected.
No, it's one of those reasons that I'm not in favor of privatizing, especially essential things like this. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Arnulfo de la Cruz. He's Executive Vice President of SEIU 2015. If you want to check out the work that they do, SEIU2015.org is the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can check this out. Now, I understand that there's a proposal, a statewide nursing home quality standards board that would help standardize nursing care and things across the state of California. Don't states already have something like this? Or at least I thought they did, or am I wrong?
You'd be surprised. The vast majority don't. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can do this through negotiating a strong union contract. But I think in the last 2 years, we've seen an explosion of interest from states and municipalities to say, wait a minute, this crisis, in California, Rick, I think it was estimated a little bit under 40% of those who lost their lives in the pandemic were just in skilled care facilities. So can you imagine being the workforce that had to witness all of that, and all of those folks and all of those patients who are having to go through this crisis of the pandemic, and then to come out of that, and we're not quite out yet, right? Especially in many care facilities across California, and then have to be fighting for wages and benefits and, explaining to a manager or the owner of the facility that they just can't handle this many patients. So we think that in order to really transform this industry, that in California, that we can lead the way and implement some changes that we think would attract, the future workforce, that they feel safe, that they feel, we had stories, Rick, as you mentioned earlier, there was a CNA, I think, who was using a plastic bag. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, where we remember that term PPE, right? The PPE wasn't around. We hadn't ordered it in mass quantities across the state of California just yet, and people were trying to protect themselves by any means necessary. So we think that in California we can do much better across the industry, and this quality standards board right now is included as part of the budget proposal in California. What it does is it gives nursing home workers a seat at the table, and gives them a voice, right? Gives them the ability to talk about what should be a minimum wage standard for nursing home staff. What are appropriate staffing levels that should be required in nursing homes that allow people to do the profession that they love and provide quality care? Because at the end of the day, it's our loved ones that are in these facilities receiving care.
Now, would this apply, just to people working in the nursing facilities, or would this apply to people who are working as home health care aides as well? Because there is a very distinct difference, right?
Yeah, and on the home care side, right, as you mentioned, I think at the top of us getting together, we also represent, a little bit over 400,000 home care providers, the majority of whom work within the IHSS, in-home support services, which is part of the public sector in California. So the nursing home sector, overwhelmingly private sector, very different. But on the home care side, and really, I forgot to mention, in both of these industries, if you look who has historically done the work, not just in California, but across the country, it's been overwhelmingly women, and it's been overwhelmingly women of color. So there's some issues around the way that we have structured caregivers,
right,
specifically domestic workers and caregivers in the history of this country, and how we haven't prioritized their standard of living. So that's a much longer conversation, but I think it's important to bring up as you mentioned this question. So on the home care side, we are also on a journey. We did some good work at the federal level. We're continuing to push at the state level because we expect that home care providers and the need for them, which is one of the fastest growing jobs in the country, is going to continue to explode. And we're working on very similar things. How do we attract the future workforce of home care so that they want to, that we can recruit the future workforce of the future for home care, understanding that there's going to be a really, really continues to be an explosive need for home care providers across the country as our population continues to age.
Now, I'm glad you cleared that up, because the nursing home workers, as you said, the private employers, they're the ones who the quality standard board would be affected by, right? And that was the one that you're talking about. Part of this board would establish a minimum wage across the industry, safe staffing levels, benefits for these caregivers, minimum training levels, things like that, which I think are really important for the industry. Would you have something similar to that for the home health care workers, which, as you point out, are public? Is there something comparable on the other side?
Yeah, and just to mention briefly also on the Quality Standards Board, we're really thrilled to have the support of California State Senator Henry Stern, Assemblymember Miguel Santiago, who both have been championing this proposal. We believe that this is an incredibly important shift that allows nursing home workers a seat at the table to address this crisis in care. And then on the home care side, this is part of our campaign, right? Time for 20, that $15 an hour, $16 an hour no longer cuts it if you're a caregiver in California, that it's just unsustainable. There's no way living in Los Angeles or San Francisco, or frankly, anywhere in California, that you can provide for your family making that. So we think there should be a minimum $20 floor for caregivers, both home care and nursing home workers across California. They've been on the front lines providing critical care for our community members, especially during this pandemic. So again, on the home care side, the median income for these primarily women is about $19,000 a year. They don't have retirement. The benefits that they receive are pretty sparse, if available at all. So you have a workforce, one of the largest, if not the largest public workforce in the state of California, making poverty wages. The majority of them are women and heads of household. As you mentioned, Rick, it's a reflection of what our priorities are as a society. We think on the home care side too that we can do much better. So we're calling a time for 20 across both industries, but there's some nuances there between the two industries that I think we've dug a little bit deeper into.
Yeah, we have to do better. I mean, as a society, we just have to do better by the folks that for a brief period of time we called heroes, we called essential. I think we have to do better. So last line of questioning I've got for you. How do we move this along? How do we make right? How do we move this in a way that we honor those commitments that those folks are making and honor our seniors and people who need assistance? How do we make this happen?
It's a great question, and it's folks like you, Rick, and to actually put the issue out there, because maybe there's folks listening now who aren't as familiar with caregiving as a profession, some of the issues that these caregivers face, those whom they care for, right? They're consumers. So I think the more that we can get the word out that caregiving is not an issue that just impacts a certain part of the population, because it really doesn't. It's an issue that affects all of us. It's a reflection of our society, how we care for our loved ones. It's not just seniors, it's also children, right? Children with disabilities. So this is something that impacts our society. And I think the more that we can share the realities of this profession, the crisis that we're in, because the demand for caregiving far exceeds the current supply of caregivers. And it's just that gap is continuing to grow. We have to do better to address that and attract the caregivers of the future. And we think that if we can do that and make sure that it's a workforce that's paid, that's protected, that's respected, that we're able to make big progress. So that's passing legislation, having champions like Henry Stern and Santiago, elected officials who, by the way, they also have their own, most people have a caregiving story that they want to share, where they can start to connect the dots to say, oh, wait a minute, I understand this now, right? My mom or my father or my cousin or my uncle, my child, right? People kind of get the connection. But the more that we can spread the word, the more that we can get people in positions of power to do something for these folks, understanding that it doesn't just impact caregivers themselves, but just like caregivers would say themselves, our members, that it has a big impact on their ability to do their job successfully. And ultimately, it impacts the quality of care that patients and consumers are able to receive.
No, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to my childhood. My mother worked in a nursing home for a number of years. And, I used to spend a lot of time there. And some of the relationships that I had with the residents, I learned lifelong lessons too. And I learned lifelong lessons from. And I remember her struggles with, people passing and the, the struggle she had with, the conditions and the poor wages. And
it's sad to hear that things haven't changed enough in all these years.
Yeah, wow. See, there you go. That's a perfect example of what I was talking about. Even you sharing that story, that's pretty fascinating. And
now this is going back to the 1970s. This is a ways back. I remember those back then, and this is where I don't want to go back to an era where we just took seniors and we warehoused them. Because when you were talking at the beginning of having to deal with 16 people, that was my mother having to run around to just bare necessities. That's heartbreaking.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I know that we can do better because it's something that impacts everyone, right? And the other big piece of this that I just wanted to mention is that having the right to have a union for these caregivers is fundamentally important for their ability to be able to create change at their workplace and in their profession. And can you believe that in 41 states in the country, many of these caregivers don't even have the right to collectively bargain, right? They don't have a union. They can't sit at the table and negotiate wages and benefits. Thankfully, here in California, we do, right? We're one of the largest unions in the state and in the country for caregivers. But at the same time, in the nursing home industry, the majority of nursing home workers don't have a union. They're not able to bargain contracts over wages, benefits, training, a lot of the issues that we just talked about. So a big priority of ours is also to ensure that we're communicating with non-union caregivers, that they have an opportunity to make these changes that we've heard from so many of them that they want to address. They have a vehicle to do that through their union. So there's a lot more work we need to do on that issue as well, Rick.
Yeah, SEIU2015.org, is that where people should go?
Yes, sir.
That's where we'll get people to look for, SEIU2015.org, the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Arnolfo, I appreciate you taking a little time for us, sharing this. I hope you'll come back and keep us up to date on what's going on.
Anytime, Rick. Really happy to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity. You take good care.
You too as well. I appreciate it. Arnolfo de la Cruz, Executive Vice President there of SEIU Local 2015. Again, check out the website. This is an important issue. Quick break, right back. Stick around. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I'll tell you, it's one of those things that I remember as a kid. My mother worked in a nursing home for years, and it was backbreaking, horrible work, low pay, long hours, because she didn't have a union. And I still remember, they just warehoused people. And it was privatized. We just dumped people into these places. And I don't ever want to see us go back to that. I don't ever want to see us be in a position where, we're that cold and heartless. So I hope folks will check out their website, SEIU2015.org. This Nursing Home Quality Standards Board sounds like a good idea. Sounds like something that needs to be done, maybe not just in California, but probably all across the country, where you're establishing across the board, especially where I live, where they're trying to privatize, one of our local nursing homes. It's just one of those things where you go, it's kind of crazy and kind of wrong, but here we are in this moment. It is what it is. I got to take a quick break here. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1981. That was the day that the cannery murders took place in Seattle, Washington. Two union organizers, Silmy Domingo and Jean Veronese, were gunned down at their labor hall. They were working to reform the cannery industry for Local 37 of the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union. Silmy and Jean were second-generation Filipino Americans. They organized against the discrimination and segregation faced by Filipino workers who labored in the summer Alaskan fishery canning industry. They were also part of a reform effort trying to build more transparency and accountability within the union local's leadership. Frustrated by the lack of support by Local 37 for the anti-discrimination campaign, the two organizers founded a legal advocacy group, the Alaska Cannery Workers Association. The ACWA filed lawsuits on behalf of the Filipino workers under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The ACWA won their cases in court, but both the canneries and the local union blacklisted ACWA members. The court ordered the reformers reinstated. Back at Local 37, the reformers formed a rank-and-file group to fight for change in the union. Then, on that fateful day, Silmy and Jean were shot by members of a local street gang. But weeks later, when the gun was found that was used in the murders, it was registered to the president of Local 37, Tony Baruzzo. An investigation found that the murders were the result of a conspiracy that went all the way to Filipino dictator Ferdinand Marcos, who wanted to silence Filipino opposition to the United States. Tony Baruzzo was eventually tried and convicted for the murders. Silmy and Jean are now honored by the ILWU as brave reformers who gave their lives for their union. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Rick Smith here, host of The Rick Smith Show. You know, Father's Day is just around the corner. And if your dad is as hard to find a gift for as my wife and kids claim that I am, here's a little gift-giving wisdom from our friends at Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. It's true. We do. Every holiday in my house, it's the same thing. Dad, what do you want for this holiday? And, I always give the same thing. Give me a hug and spend a little time with me. I don't need ties or cologne or any of that stuff. And now, thanks to Omaha Steaks, they ask, Dad, what do you want? Steaks. Give me the Dads Want Steaks package. Just go to omahasteaks.com, type Rick Smith in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package. And for just $99, this limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees that I love, and I guarantee he'll love too. The smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignons, the gourmet jumbo franks, their air-chilled, boneless chicken breast, and of course my favorite, the thick, delicious, boneless pork chops. And to finish it off, the sweet finish of it all, the delicious caramel apple tartlets. And as a special gift for my listeners, when you type Rick Smith in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you'll also get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These are awesome. You throw them on the grill, cook them to perfection. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor, made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever, a whopping 6 ounces. So this Father's Day, don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. In fact, don't just order one. Get 2 Dads Want Steaks packages. One for him and one he can share with you. Just go to omahasteaks.com and type Rick Smith in the search bar and get the Dads Want Steaks package. You won't regret it. I guarantee it.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, been an interesting day. Again, I'm looking at Marjorie Trader Green. Evidently the entire species is going to turn gay in the next 150 years. Look, if she's the last woman on Earth, yeah, maybe. Who knows? Crazy times. Let's get Gary on line 1 to see what's on his mind. How are we doing today, Gary?
I'm doing just about the same as everybody else I know is doing right now. And by the way, you just said that Marjorie Trader Green just said that everybody is going to turn gay in 50 years, Marjorie Trader Green makes me want to be gay. That's what I've got to say to her. You know, here's the thing. That woman, that one single woman, manages to get on TV virtually every single day. And it is not a half hour that I don't hear about her because of her incredible, uneducated, inflammatory statements. And it makes me wonder, Rick, and by the way, thank you for having me on, makes me wonder, where's Bob Casey? Not that he's stupid, but where is he? I don't hear from Bob Casey nearly as much as I hear from Marjorie Trader Green. And where's, Josh Shapiro? I'd love to hear him. He should be out in front of the cameras every day. And where's, Madeline Dean and Brendan Boyle and all these other folks that I have, at least in the Philadelphia area? Why don't I see them? When Marjorie Trader Green can basically get on her little podcast, say something outrageous, and the entire world is talking about that stupid thing, gazpacho, peach tree dishes. Give me a break. Why is it that we do not hear from our elected people? I mean, let's face it, Josh Fetterman, he's a guy I believe could talk to the people every single day. And because he's 6'8" and looks the way he does, he is an entertainment all to himself.
Yeah, John's a good guy.
I think he's amazing, but I'd love to see more of him. I'd love to see him, and this is actually me speaking through your station, asking people, call these folks. Tell these folks that you want to see them, you want to hear them reject the absurdity that's coming out of the right. The things that Marjorie Trader Green and her twin sister Lauren Boebert and the other knuckleheads that are over there, these things that are patently untrue. I would love to see these guys come out and say, hey, guess what? That's not true. That is not true. And here's the context that you need to understand in order to see that that's not true. But these guys don't spend nearly as much time getting in front of the camera as the folks on the right. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she makes an effort to get on the camera. These guys can do it too. It's not something that they can't do. They can call press conferences. They can do all kinds of things. But it's important that we hear them. And if any of those guys are listening to your show right now, I am begging you, please don't underestimate the intelligence of the American public. Yes, we are amusing ourselves to death with the Kardashians and with the Real Wives and with Marjorie Trader Green and Lauren Boebert and Josh Hawley and these other guys. Tell us the truth. We want to hear what's so. We don't always want to be entertained. So please talk to us.
There you go.
If one little blonde lady can do it, I'm certain that these guys can too. And if they're not doing it, then I have to ask why.
Yeah, but crazy
why
sells.
Are you not there?
Crazy sells. Because guess what? We just talked about it for 4.5 minutes.
Yes, crazy sells. Crazy sells wonderful. That's why I think a guy like Fetterman could get out. Not because he's crazy. He definitely looks different. And because he could be an entertainment. Entertainment is what sells. We love to be entertained. And stupid is entertaining. Yep. I'm not saying that Fetterman is stupid by any stretch of the imagination. What I am saying is he has an entertaining aura.
No, John's a good guy.
And he can use that.
And as soon as he's well, we're going to have him back on the show. In fact, we were supposed to have him on before he had his stroke. But
I can't wait to see him again. I know he's been ill. I pray for him. And, I just, but still, I'd like to hear from Madeline Dean. I'd love to hear from, our state senators, our state senator. I'd love to hear from these folks that we've elected, and all they have to do is open their mouth. I believe.
There you go.
All they have to do is make an effort to talk to us. I'm not seeing that, and I'm asking folks, call them, ask them to come out because we need to hear the other side of crazy.
All right, Gary, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Have a great night, Rick.
You too. Good stuff. I want sanity. I don't want the other side of crazy. I want sanity. Let's go with that. But hey, Marjorie Greene, she's always got a line to get some attention. And the most recent one is if we do anything on guns, if we do what Canada's doing, Russia's going to invade, I guess. I guess Russia's going to invade Canada, maybe? Is that what that was all about? Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
So what do you think? What do you think of that? The whole country's going to turn gay in a couple of generations.
Well, now, it might be a possibility. Statistically, it's impossible. But if Marjorie, I shouldn't even say this, but I'm going to, if Marjorie Taylor, 3 names, actually goes out and meets enough people, they may decide that there is an alternative to being straight.
Ooh.
Huh?
Yeah, see, no, I'm not, okay. Yeah.
Or it might be an alternative to moving out of the United States once they meet her. I mean, there's all kinds of great possibilities.
She could be the poster child for abstinence only, though.
But that's it. So, when she came up with this one, I'm trying to, the other ones are ridiculous, but I'm looking at this one today and I'm thinking, who on earth, does she create this, or does she have somebody on payroll that says, hey, I've got a crazy idea, how about we do this one today?
Yeah, and the question that I keep coming back to, because, the Petri dish thing and Russia's going to invade Canada thing, you wonder, is she really this dumb? Or is she, doing the Three's Company Chrissy Snow thing and just acting really dumb? Is she the smartest person in the room acting really dumb to get all this attention?
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried, frankly, to talk to people that, know her, and they won't admit it publicly. But a lot of the Republicans, they wish she would be somewhere else because she's just too crazy for some of the people.
But here's the scary part. If you're a Republican right now, if you're in leadership, the scary part is I believe, Marjorie Trainwreck Greene is going to be the sane one next January. I believe we're going to be pining for the days when it was, because look, I go back to Michelle Bachmann, and I remember going, boy, Michelle Bachmann's the craziest of the crazy. She's way out there, but she was fun crazy.
Right.
I pine for the days of Michelle Bachmann crazy, because
right.
today the current
Ellen
Republican
Ratner,
Party,
our friend, used to be personal friends with Michelle Bachmann, and you actually could be, even though she was, I like how you put it, she was fun crazy. Marjorie Taylor Greene is just crazy, and there's not much anybody can do about her. And yes, I understand it's a free country and you can be elected and be crazy. I fully get that. It's happened historically. But she goes to the top of the food chain here, and eventually, she can't be allowed to be allowed. When I say that, she can be elected. It's a free country, but she can't be allowed to ascend into leadership positions in the Republican Party if they want to stay intact in Congress. But I do agree. Right now, she is in a driver's seat, as crazy as she can be, because McCarthy, if the House rolls over, wants to be Speaker, and if Marjorie Taylor Greene takes a little band of people, from him, if they somehow follow her, then he doesn't become the Speaker.
Yeah, no, this is a weird moment we're in, because I'm starting to read these stories about these armies of Republican operatives who are going to be challenging votes, and now they're training poll workers to be part of the army to challenge people, and it looks like the fix is already beginning to come in. They're holding trainings on how to train poll workers to block people from voting, and you go, wait a second, I thought poll workers are supposed to be nonpartisan. Not anymore.
Right, and also the attempt by former President Trump and people associated with him to get certain people in office in key states so that they can try to, manipulate the system there. Look, in you're in the race for Pennsylvania's governor, Josh Shapiro is facing a guy, Mastriano, who has completely, bought into the stop the steal. Completely bought into it. I know some Republicans are uncomfortable with that, and they feel it will affect Mastriano in the fall in a negative way. But the fact that he's probably going to, campaign on stop the steal.
No, he's not probably. He is. He's campaigning on it. And in fact, some of the statements that have come out that, they may not certify future elections if he's governor. Think about that for a second.
Wow.
He's coming out and saying, maybe not. Maybe, who knows? We may not. We may have. He may have been the guy to give Trump what Trump wanted.
And if that happens, I mean, look, if there is a legitimate problem, at the polls, and somebody discovers something, we have a process that goes through that. We all know that. We have a process that looks at it for fraud or not. But to just say you don't like a certain candidate, and you're going to try to find the votes in any manner you have to overturn it, if that type of process takes hold and continues, it will rip the fabric of our society in half when it comes to our voting process.
Bob. I think we're there. I think we're already there. This idea that, crisis is coming. No, I think crisis is here. Because I talk to a lot of my Republican, I'm not going to call them friends anymore, a lot of these Republican acquaintances I've got who truly believe the last election was stolen, that it was all rigged, that Joe Biden somehow learned coding, and he stole the election just for him. Granted, all the Republicans that won, that was fair and square. But it's bizarre.
Well, I mean, I agree with you on that aspect of people out there. I was in California with family, and somebody asked me a question at a dinner with about 12 people. And of course, remember, these were family members, too, and friends. They asked me about, was the election stolen? And I gave them the detailed, complete answer that, yes, it was a close election. It wasn't a runaway election. But there wasn't the fraud levels. And I went through Giuliani, and he really didn't present the evidence. He presented it at a press conference, the whole thing. And the one guy at the table, I won't say who because they probably listen to your show too, but he dropped his fork. And he said, "You've got to be kidding me. What's wrong with you? It was stolen." And I said, "Well, I just went through the reasons why it wasn't. But I also gave the caveat it was close. It was a close election, and that didn't matter. He was like appalled that I would not say it was a stolen election. I was in shock.
No,
really, I was.
This is where this next election is going to be interesting, to say the least, and the power dynamic shift of putting ideologues into these. I mean, true ideologues, people who truly believe 2020 was stolen, and they're taking office solely to make sure that they can steal the future elections, and have stated so and are okay with that because we're going to get payback. That truly dangerous.
Well, also, logic will not come into play the last election. If you look at certain states where Trump lost, but Republicans won, so somebody has to be telling me, if they believe in Stop the Steal, that this system was so sophisticated in fraud that they were able to let certain Republicans be elected, but they were able to manipulate and make sure Trump wasn't. That's how sophisticated they claim it to be.
Yeah. That's because Biden, no sense. During the pandemic, this was explained to me. He learned how to code in the basement.
Right. Oh, my.
But here's the thing, and this is the reason I brought this up with you, because I know you're the guy who, as a Republican legislator, helped to write the Help America Vote Act.
Right. Mm-hmm.
When you wrote this, when you guys were writing this, did you imagine that it would be this scenario? Did you imagine that it would be this badly perverted?
No, not in our wildest dreams. If I was back in Congress, we probably would. Well, it wouldn't go anywhere. Steny Hoyer and I might introduce another bill. I doubt it will go anywhere because things have changed. Because, like I always point out, we had Mitch McConnell and Ted Kennedy on our bill in the Senate. All right, think about that. We had that combination, but we responded to the bitterness and anger, etc. Both sides out there with the Bush versus Gore election. And we went in to try to do something in the system to give more confidence. And we worked with every single Board of Election in the country through their advocacy groups. We worked with the NAACP, the ARP, the everything initials that you can work with in the country. And we came up with, something. And it remained, out there. And now I look at it and I'm like, wow, I never in my wildest dreams thought that it would, come down to what's going on now in the election systems and what some of the states are trying to do to alter, the elections.
If you're in Congress now, I mean, and again, every time we talk, I keep going, you're one election away from being back in there. And I'm willing to donate. If you're back there, is there a way to fix this mess? Is there a legislative fix here? Is there a path forward?
Well, there is a path forward, and we have several things. Let's take I'll call it the compromise bill. That doesn't mean it's a bad bill, the John Lewis bill. And again, that doesn't mean it's a bad bill, but it is what's deemed a compromise bill. We can look at the election systems. We can look at what went right or what went wrong or what needs tweaked or fixed. We could do that. The problem we have today, I think, is when Steny Hoyer and I sat down, the two of us, to talk. Steny's the number 2 Democratic member now in the country, in the House. When we sat down, we both agreed we were going to get some knuckles. Okay, we're going to get some fists from both of our parties, and we got some. People, what are you doing this for, Bob? Why on earth would you work with Steny Hoyer? What's wrong with you? You're going to destroy the election systems. No, we're not. We kept prevailing. We went to Kennedy, Chris Dodd, Mitch McConnell, and we put a bill together. Now, unfortunately, today, I'm not sure we would be able to do it. We would try to do it, I think, but it would be just a tougher element because I never had anybody on my side of the aisle that went so crazy with what we're doing. They didn't like it, but, Rick, they didn't go the Marjorie Taylor Greene crazy,
No, I mean, this is where we're in this moment where it just seems like nothing big can happen. We can't accomplish any big goals. And I look at today, another shooting, more people dead, more children dead. The shooting in Texas. Nothing. We're gonna do nothing. Nothing's gonna happen again. Again, there'll be outrage. There'll be media attention. There'll be thoughts and prayers. There'll be more outrage. There'll be calls for do something, and then there'll be this time's different, and then nothing.
It goes the full circle, historically, time after time after time. Now this time, I thought with the statement, and we'll see whether it proves itself, because words can be cheap. With the statement that Mitch McConnell made to Senator Cornyn from Texas, that worked with some Democrats for some change, I think McConnell probably wouldn't have made that statement unless he actually meant for Cornyn to do it. But then the question becomes, is anything really going to happen?
Yeah, you get 60 votes in the Senate? No,
right.
And unless Joe Manchin's going to do something on the filibuster, no, nothing happens. And we've seen this movie, and Joe Manchin going, "Oh, this time's different." No, it's not. It's like the last several times you said this time's different. It's not.
Well, I said on radio last week, on a couple of stations, Manchin came to Schumer again and said, "Well, let's talk about BBB, Build Back Better." And if I was Chuck Schumer, if I was his advisor, I'd say, "Senator, go to the Senate dining room, have a piece of pie, and please ignore this."
Yeah.
Because it's not going to go anywhere.
No, I mean, because Manchin just came out, was it yesterday, and said that we've got to do something on prescription drug prices.
Right.
And I'm going, wait a second, hello. Wasn't that last year? Are you doing the Lucy thing again? Are you going to dangle the football out there again, only to jerk it away at the last minute?
Like I said last week, if I were Schumer, I wouldn't take the bait.
Yeah, and I didn't. It's just this is one of those moments where we're in. But on the gun issue, is there anything that can be done? I mean, because I'm getting hammered with all these people. You can't solve all the problems, so basically don't do anything.
It can be done, and it's comprehensive. There is an issue of mental health, and I fully get that, and it should be talked about. And, there are red flag issues. There are issues they're going to have to address that involves HIPAA, people's, medical personal knowledge rights, but they're going to have to be addressed when it comes to acquiring a gun, looking at ages, all those things. But there are things that can be done, and again, I think they can't lay this at the doorstep that it's all mental health. It's a combination of a lot of things. So yes, there are some things I think that could be done. Let's just see if they have any even small will to do it over McConnell telling Cornyn. And that's a big deal. Cornyn's from the state where this happened. And so if Cornyn yields at all to, work with Senator Murphy and a coalition of Republicans, Murphy said he knows there's a coalition out there, a small group of them, and it doesn't take a lot, but if they can get something going. So, but they're going to have to do it in the next 2 or 3 weeks. This isn't one of those things. If it sits, it will sit till the next disaster happens. Then the circle starts again.
And then the circle starts.
Catch-22.
Yeah, well, we'll see where this takes us. I'm always hopeful. I'm always somewhat optimistic, but in this vein, I don't know. It's like Yogi Berra. It's like deja vu all over again.
Right. We'll see what happens. But again, it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, or it's not going to happen.
There you go, Bob. I appreciate the time as
Thank
always.
You,
good stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. I want something to happen. I think we need to have something happen. I think the American people want something to happen. Interestingly enough, I do get a lot of the hate and angry. You're an idiot. I hate you. God's gonna find you. I just got one of those, which is funny. I'm not quite sure why God's gonna be angry about me. This is one of those weird things. God will have the final say, period. I don't know what that means. So James, thanks for the email. And I don't get that. Gonna have the final say for me or for the children that were murdered? I'm confused. I don't want God to have the final say on the children just yet. Down the road when they're 80 and have lived a full life, yeah, okay, great. But, save the stupid emails. Or at least have something to say. But everyone else, please feel free. Send your angry emails this way. I do answer all of them personally. Thank you. Especially on this issue. This has gotten a lot of heated response. And a lot of it goes in a couple of very distinct areas. You can't solve all the problems, so don't do anything. It's my right. You can't touch this. The absolute belief that they are more important than everybody else, and their right to their fetish item is much more important than the lives of anybody else. Their rights supersede everybody else's. And then this idea where the Arizona Republican Party is that particular amendment is sacrosanct. It is absolute. Nothing can happen to that. And all of those are wrong. We can, as a society, make change. Sane, rational change. And look, as I said before, I'm not a gun grabber. I think people should have the right to legally own a gun. Should use it however they see fit. As long as it's not going into a school and murdering children. Or anybody else. Just my thought. Again, I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We are going to be taking 2 days off over the next couple of days. Going to do a little whitewater rafting with my son, a little bike riding. We do this every year. We go away, we run away together and spend a little time doing the father-son thing, a little bonding, a little elbow bumping, a little beating each other up. Got to do that kind of stuff. Rejuvenate, revive, all of that. We're going to be running some of the best of over the next couple of nights. I hope you enjoy that. I'm going to pick out a couple of my favorite interviews with some commentary around them on why they're my favorite. So make sure you tune in for that. I think important stuff. But again, if you missed any of today's program or any of our programs, make sure you grab the podcast at thericksmithshow.com or, again, wherever you get your podcasts. And email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.